The scripture reading this morning is from the Gospel of John, chapter 21, verses 1 through 14. Jesus appears to the disciples while fishing. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them, and they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and they got into a boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not recognize that it was Jesus. And he called out to them, "Friends, have you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say this, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and he jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, and about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire with burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have caught." Simon Peter climbed aboard and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many fish, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and he gave it to them, and did the same for the fish. This was now the 3rd time that Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. The word of God to the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
My guess is that any of you who have ever had a family member or a close friend who died might sympathize with Simon Peter in today's story. Now, when you or I say, "Let's go fish," or "I'm going to go fishing," we mean a fun activity. You know, let's go out on the boat, let's get the rod and reel, maybe some friends are coming with us, maybe we're traveling to Belize to go fishing. Maybe we're going to do something special, but a fishing trip indicates fun. Let's go fishing. I'm going fishing. That means I'm going to relax, take some time off, and be away from it all. Well, when Simon Peter says, "I'm going fishing," what he was really saying was, well, all right, Jesus is dead, and he's been resurrected, but I've got to go back to work. And my guess is that anybody who has gone through a death that was as close as Jesus was to Peter might understand that feeling. There's a lot to do after a death, and people are willing to cut us a whole lot of slack because we're not functioning really well after a death. And so they understand, well, you know, they're just not up to speed. But there finally comes a time after there's been a death in the family or in the community when you finally have to say, well, I've got to go back to work. I've got to go back to work. I've got to get back into some sort of normal pattern. Whatever this new normal is going to be, it's time for me to get into it. That's what Peter was saying. He wasn't saying, well, I'm going to go out and have a fun time. What he's saying is, it's time for me to get back to work. Now, it's interesting because when there's a death in the church, I immediately get two questions. First question is, what about the services, or some variation? What time will the service be? Will the service be in the sanctuary or in the chapel? Is there going to be visitation? But that's always the first question. The question is about the service. Would you care to guess what the second question always is? You've asked it. Are we going to feed the family? That is always the second question. Is that my microphone making that charming sound? Yeah, I'm afraid of that. Sometimes it means it's too close to my mouth, and sometimes it means there's a loose connection. All right, well, we'll see how that works. But the second question that the church always asks is, are we going to feed the families? Now, this church has changed over the years. It's still true that if someone who is regular and is very involved and everybody knows them, then frequently when that kind of person dies within the church, then everybody brings food and we end up doing a potluck for the family. And that works very well. But these days we also sometimes have families that people can't get here for the service, or they can't get here for lunch, or they can't help out in some strange way. And so then we use what's known as the funeral meals fund. And we cater that meal, because the church still wants to feed the family. Some of you donate regularly to the funeral meals fund. Thank you very much. It means we never have to worry about whether or not we're going to feed a family after a funeral. But we feed families either right before or right after the funeral service, because we understand that people got to eat if they're going to live. You have got to eat if you're going to live. That is one of those basic things about being human beings. And so when the church says, all right, we're going to feed the family, that is the church saying, we are going to affirm life even in the face of death. Whether there's a memorial service, whether there's a funeral, we are going to have food, because food is a sign of life even in the face of death. It was 9 years ago today, 5/5/10, that my mother died. We were very fortunate because she was able to die at home. And so that morning, after we'd all gotten up, my brother and I, of course, lived in different parts of the city. And so we drove over to Dad's house. And Dad and my brother and I all went over. We didn't use a funeral home. We used one of those companies that does cremation. And Mom and Dad had planned all this ahead of time. So we were only in that kind of office for an hour, which is some kind of record. You know, these days you go to a funeral home, you can be there a lot longer than an hour. But we were only there about an hour. Would you care to guess what we did after we finished with the cremation? Exactly right. We went to lunch. We went to lunch. We weren't even cognizant of the fact at that point that it was Cinco de Mayo. We went out for Mexican food because we like Mexican food. But we went out to eat. Because when you eat in the face of death, it is an affirmation of life. It is to say, we understand life beyond what we can see now. But the one that we can see now, you gotta eat. We have one member of this church who can no longer eat. And she struggles with that disease. Because all of us are aware, and especially her family who live with her, we are so desperately aware that this cannot end well. We have a member of our church where the cancer is spread to the stomach. And eventually that same problem is going to come up. How do you eat? Eating is one of those things that's vitally important no matter what century we're talking about. And the Bible is full of images of needing to eat. The Bible death. So, for instance, when we have those funeral services, we read the 23rd Psalm. The 23rd Psalm says, Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. No matter what the enemy is, no matter what the problem is, God understands that we're going to eat. Today is the third Sunday of Easter. And the Easter celebration actually reaches back past that first Sunday of Easter. It reaches back into the Thursday. We now call it Holy Thursday. And Holy Thursday is the night that we remember when Jesus instituted what we would call the Last Supper. And in a lot of churches, that Last Supper then is what we commemorate when we have communion. And Jesus was specific about it. Jesus understood that he was about to die. And in the face of death, he had supper. Checking to see that the table's turned the right way. If you sit close enough, you can read on the front of the table, in remembrance of me. We are to eat and remember Jesus, was the command on Holy Thursday night. But it's interesting because that whole eating extends into the Easter season as well. We read the story of the first night when Jesus appeared. Easter night when he appears to the disciples in the locked room and they think he's a ghost. How did he prove to them that he was not a ghost? Do you remember? He ate something. Do you have something to eat? And he ate the broiled fish in their presence. He ate something in order to prove he was alive, because in resurrection, it's feasting time. On Easter Day, 2 of the disciples were walking to Emmaus. And as they were walking, a stranger joined them. Turns out the stranger was Jesus, but they didn't know it at the time. And so Jesus walks along with them all the way to Emmaus, and by the time they get to the village, then it's beginning to get dark. And the disciples urge this strange man, "Oh, don't go any further, it's dangerous, stay with us." And they went in, and guess what they did? They ate. They ate supper together. And Jesus took the bread, blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to them, and that was the moment that the disciples knew that it was Jesus. Luke is very specific, because those disciples ran back to Jerusalem to tell the others how he was made known in the breaking of bread. And we don't know when this story from John happened. John's specifics start with Jesus was raised from the dead on Easter morning. Easter night, he appears to the disciples. They think he's a ghost. And a week later then, he appears again, and he offers his hands and side to Thomas. But then we don't know how much longer goes on between the end of chapter 20 and the beginning of chapter 21. Maybe another week, maybe a month, who knows? But however long it was, Peter says, "I got to go back to work." And he fishes through the night. He and his friends fish through the night, and they get nothing. But when Jesus tells them what to do, they follow his instructions, and the net is so full they can hardly haul it. And when they arrive at the beach, Jesus has cooked breakfast. Now, communion may have started at the Last Supper, but it occurs to me that maybe we ought to label this 21st chapter of John the first breakfast. To break the fast, that's where that meal gets its name. To break the fast, whatever has been keeping us from Jesus, it's time to break that fast. or cried about at the Last Supper, it is now time to celebrate, to be strengthened by the first breakfast. And so we gather at the table. We gather at the table not only because it's the Last Supper before Jesus goes to die, but also because it's the first breakfast. It's the breaking of the fast that Jesus offers to all of us, that we eat in the face of death, that we affirm life in the face of death, that we celebrate resurrection, even in the shadow of crucifixion. You know how it is with Methodists, of course. Where 2 or 3 Methodists gather, we eat and take up an offering. We've certainly been proving that true. 2 weeks ago, we all gathered together for breakfast tacos, didn't we? Today, after this service, oh please, Griselda, pretty short. After this service, we're going to go over to the youth building, and all 4 congregations are going to celebrate with a fajita meal. And let me tell you, I put some of the cheese in the refrigerator over there. We have enough cheese to feed Patton's 5th Army. 2 weeks from today, we will celebrate again. We will celebrate all those people who are graduating from high school. There are 5 of them this year, I think. And we'll eat, because that's what we do. When we gather together, we eat. When those funeral meals get served, people turn out and then they come to me after and say, you know what? I think I was blessed more than the family. And that's true. When there's a death, some of you say, I don't know what to say and I don't know what to do. But when we serve a meal, we know what to say. We know what to do, don't we? Why don't you have a little bigger serving of mashed potatoes there? Would you like me to refill your tea? Oh, go on. I know you had one dessert. Have another. We know what to do with a meal, don't we? We know what to do. We know what to say. And that's affirming life in the face of death. That's what Jesus does. This was the 3rd appearance after the resurrection, says John. And Jesus fed the disciples. And Jesus feeds us. We gather at this table and we know what to do. We know what to say. And we eat because this is an affirmation of life, even in the face of death. Because if you're going to live, you got to eat. So come and have breakfast. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.